The information that was just revealed in episode 2 of season 2 of The Promised Neverland changes everything that we know about this world and what it represents. The idea that there's actually two worlds that are divided by a promise that humans would not hunt demons and demons would not hunt humans. And for 1,000 years, that promise has seemingly been kept. There will be no walking over to each of the worlds. It's divided. They will never cross over. And as a will of good peace, saying, hey, we will keep our promise, you leave behind some of your own people as kind of like a sacrifice for the greater good, and those people, your ancestors, are bred to be food for a cattle farm for basically all eternity. That changes everything. It's both the most depressing but optimistic information that Emma and Ray could end up getting. While you may think, while listening to Sanji kind of explain this, you're like, oh, this is horrible, there's no way to get out of this. At the same time, for kids who have been raised on a farm wondering, is there even humans out there, even that small glimmer of hope that there is enough to make them want to break down the system. Though I will say, when the information was revealed, if this is to be believed, and despite, obviously, the skeptic in me is kind of saying, well, at the same time, this is all he said, she said. No one's actually know for sure if anyone's ever crossed over or not. If it was just them wanting to get over this wall, this barrier, whatever it may be, if it's magical or something, I could see them being able to do so. But the fact that Em and them, they want to bring down every single cattle farm, I don't see how this could end positively. I mean, they could end up surviving, but there's no way the demons would end up still functioning. And it's going to be interesting because in this episode, we get the confirmation that these two demons, they don't feed on humans at all. They have their religious reasons for doing so. And I actually found that to be a pretty interesting turn of events. It wasn't this like, oh, we like humans because a human saved us back in the day or something. It's simply because our faith doesn't permit us, which honestly goes hand in hand with so many faiths in the real world, why you don't eat meat on a certain day and things like that. I actually think that's a far more interesting turn of events, especially considering that the flower that episode 1 of season 1 kicks off with, where you see a child get stabbed by a flower and the flower blossoms, turns out to have a lot of importance that if you show respect and you pay your respect to the gods, if that flower blooms while you kill a person with the flower, that means the blood will be removed and will make the meat perfect. It's like, that's so interesting to see how faith is being tied into this show in such an interesting way, especially in the face of such demonic monstrosities, while you would typically say, is actually something a little more beautiful and I guess optimistic would be the way I'd put it. I'm very curious though if the story is going the direction, while I don't expect this all to happen this season, don't get it mistaken. This will be season 3, season 4 down the road. But I'm very curious, if they do bring down these cattle farms and they somehow get to the human world, would the demons not retaliate? The humans broke their promise, so then we can break our promise and go feed across the wall or go feed across the barrier, right? If this was them just trying to get across and be free themselves and not worrying about the other farms, then I wouldn't say there's too much risk outside of unless you get hunted before you reach that point. The Minerva storyline is going to be the defining aspect. If this Minerva really exists, or an ancestor of Minerva, what's going to happen there, if that's going to reveal a lot of information that will be kind of like the one-up on the demons, but still, it's hard to say what's going to happen here, and I'm very concerned but hopeful that maybe something good will turn out from this. I mean, even though we look at these demons as they're feeding on humans, if you look at it from a logical perspective, right, what they're doing is technically no different than what humans do to animals. We raise cattle, we raise pigs, chickens, things like that. Well, yeah, they can't talk back and they don't have the same level of intelligence. It's still just a matter of, like, you can always make an argument to justify what's happening here. So to see that humans and demons made this promise, unless it's complete lies that the demons have been fed, which could be something, I'm curious what's going to happen, because this could be seen as like an act of terrorism, what these kids want to do. And if they do that and they cross over to the human world, will the human world even accept them if they literally destroyed the peace that has been there for 1,000 years? It's an interesting thought process, and I really think you could have numerous conversations with so many different people and come out with a different perspective on how to view this entire topic, and I don't know what to feel right now. The emotional side says I want Emma to be able to save everyone and be able to have a happy-go-lucky human life, but the logical side says what she's about to do could actually cause far more harm than good, and honestly, it all depends on if the promise is actually real. If this promise isn't warped history, and both sides are functioning peacefully separately and not hurting the other. And if that is the case, we could see Emma as being an antagonist in this situation, but if that promise has been warped by history and, skewed by the people passing down this information, she could easily be the hero. It's hard to say what's going to happen, but I mean, obviously as humans, we want to root for humans, but it is interesting to put ourselves in the other's perspectives, to play devil's advocate going against these characters, and it's a really fascinating thought process that really only shows like The Promised Neverland, which is only a handful of shows over the past few years, can get that type of a reaction out of me, where I'm just contemplating for a week what I just saw, and the new episode makes me think all the more. I thought there was a lot of great moments in this episode, some simple ones too, just the idea of like them actually teaching these kids how to survive, how to make fires, how to cook, all these really interesting, cute things. But I think the thing that really kind of stood out to me was there's two key moments, was where Emma and Ray kind of get confronted by the other kids, saying like, you gotta, like, if you're sick, you have to tell us, you can't just go passing out. Like, you had your ear cut off, that wasn't part of the plan. Ray, you can't be a mindless sacrifice, and if it wasn't for Sanju, you would have ended up dead. It's nice that it's not just like, yeah, they're kids, right? And obviously they're more intelligent than your average group of kids, but still, it doesn't change the fact that they care for them as family, and we don't want mindless sacrifices, and we shouldn't just continue to play ourselves up as a shield because eventually you're gonna break. But the second thing that really stood out to me was the religious flower angle, and the idea that Emma is someone who doesn't want to hunt. She's not someone who wants to kill people, but knows that if they're going to survive without these demons, then they need to be able to hunt. And so for her to like have this doubt of killing and then finally does, but you don't even shoot to kill, you shoot to kind of like wound, and then you use these flowers that you pay your respect, stab it through the heart when it's alive, and if the offering is accepted, they'll blossom. It's such a twisted, but I think so interesting kind of religion, and the fact that Sanju is saying, if the flower blossomed, it means respect was there and they did not suffer. And I want to believe him, I honestly do, because it feels like, well, watching two demons who you would think, when you see demons, when you see monsters, you want to push back and say they're monstrosities, they're horrible things. But the fact that we're getting this time to really just travel with these two characters, it puts into perspective that the demons that were raising us for all this time may not be just simply demonic, evil things that we have to kill. They might have just as good or bad intentions as any normal human. And that's such a fascinating concept, and that's what I love about The Promised Neverland's world, is it really gets you thinking beyond just good and bad, but more morally gray, which only select shows like Attack on Titan or Promised Neverland really do get out of me, and I really like that about this show. But the voice acting was on point, the music was on point, the directing was on point. It just feels like, once again, another compelling episode that sucks you in and just has you asking all these questions, wanting to see more. And honestly, with the pursuers still on their trail, I think we're going to see some insanity sooner rather than later. Like, I know some manga readers were either happy that they condensed the previous chapters with last week's episode, or were upset that they didn't flesh it out. I think when you look at it from an anime perspective and what the anime was able to do, I think the pacing is quite tight for the anime itself, condensing the important materials, but really keeping the focus on what's important, the world and where the story is going to go. And obviously that's just my opinion, you're allowed to have a different one. But for me, I don't feel like the pacing is off in the slightest, and I mean, with the actual manga author working alongside this project, actually adding some extra material, it says to me that this is the way that the author wanted it to be, so I'm always going to trust the author's intentions above all else, so I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with the remaining episodes, and hopefully when we get that season 3 and 4, because you know it's got to be coming, right? Like, where that's going to go, because they got a lot of potential with this world, and not many series get to say that. I'd love to know everyone's theories and speculations down below. What did you think, and where do you think it might go in episode 3 next week? If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care, and have a good one.